You might want to sit down for this one, because France, the so-called anchor of Europe, is quietly rewriting the global playbook, not by cozying up to Washington or NATO, but by turning toward BRICS. Yes, that BRICS. The alliance once brushed off as a loose coalition of developing economies is suddenly at the center of France's attention. And this isn't some polite trade talk or symbolic handshake. It's a calculated move, a clear signal to the West that Paris is done waiting. While Brussels scrambles over budgets and Berlin clings to Washington's every word, Macron's been whispering in Beijing and New Delhi's ears. These aren't casual chats, they're deep strategic talks. And guess what? BRICS is listening. What was once dismissed as France being France now looks like the spark that could fracture the European Union from within. And the timing couldn't be worse. France itself is burning, not just in the streets, but in its government. Macron's administration just imploded after yet another brutal no-confidence vote. That makes 3 political collapses in under a year. This isn't healthy democracy, it's open revolt. The French are furious and the far right can smell opportunity. Marine Le Pen waits patiently, biding her time, while Macron keeps trying to play kingmaker, rewriting pension laws, bypassing parliament, enforcing austerity. But every move backfires. The political center has collapsed, parliament's in chaos, and leadership practically non-existent. So what does Macron do? He doesn't double down on Brussels or beg the EU for unity. Instead, he picks up the phone to Beijing, to Delhi. As France's domestic politics spiral, Macron is looking east, fast. His message: if Europe can't keep it together, France has other plans. And those plans are bold. BRICS just supercharged its influence in 2024, welcoming Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, the UAE, and Ethiopia. Overnight, the bloc became the lifeline of global energy, commanding nearly half of the world's oil, gas, and critical minerals. The energy arteries that once ran through the G7 now pulse through BRICS. France sees the future unfolding and refuses to be left behind. Macron's already thrown his weight behind India's upcoming 2026 BRICS presidency. Meanwhile, Marseille is quietly transforming into Europe's main gateway to the booming India-Middle East-Europe trade corridor. While Brussels drowns in bureaucracy, France is out there cutting deals, building influence, and carving out a role in the new world order. India's economy is booming. It's the fastest-growing major power on Earth, flexing its muscles in tech, defense, and trade. France is already locked in deep, 8.5 billion euros worth of Rafale jets, submarine projects, and infrastructure links connecting India directly to Europe, all designed to bypass China entirely. But Macron hasn't turned his back on Beijing either. His 2023 visit to China was strictly business. Talks on climate, trade, and tech security. He stood firm on national interests, rejecting risky tech transfers and guarding France's industries. Macron isn't choosing sides. He's playing both, skillfully. Building leverage, not allegiance. Meanwhile, Europe itself is cracking under pressure. Germany's economy is shrinking and gas-starved. Italy's drowning in debt. Poland and Hungary keep thumbing their noses at Brussels, daring it to respond. And Brussels, frozen. Because nothing moves until all 27 members agree. Imagine trying to put out a fire by forming a committee first. France has had enough. While others debate, it acts, striking deals with India, China, and Gulf powers on energy, defense, and trade. It's moving like a nation rediscovering its independence in a Europe that feels stuck in slow motion. If the EU doesn't fix its paralysis soon, France may just lead the exodus. And here's the kicker. By mid-2025, BRICS quietly surpassed the G7 in purchasing power GDP, hitting $50 trillion against the G7's $48 trillion. On paper, it's just a number. In reality, it's the start of a global power shift, and France is already stepping onto the winning side. You can almost feel the ground shifting beneath the global stage, because this isn't just another diplomatic shuffle, it's history in motion. With Saudi Arabia and the UAE stepping into BRICS, the bloc now commands about 35% of the world's oil exports. That's not just influence, that's power. The kind that can turn energy markets, rattle currencies, and rewrite alliances. In a world still recovering from energy shocks, soaring prices, and rising resource nationalism, that kind of leverage is priceless. But energy is only the beginning. Behind closed doors, BRICS is building something even bigger: a unified digital currency and a cross-border payment system completely independent from SWIFT. That's no side hustle. It's a direct challenge to the US dollar and the euro, the twin pillars of the global financial order. If they pull it off, the monetary architecture that's defined global trade for 70 years starts to look shaky, outdated, vulnerable, and the West can feel it. France's sudden pivot toward BRICS isn't random. It's a warning. When Macron publicly endorsed India's BRICS presidency for 2026, it wasn't polite diplomacy, it was positioning. France sees the tide turning toward a multipolar world, one where no single alliance calls the shots, and Paris wants a stake in both sides of that future. Because if Europe doesn't adapt fast, it risks fading into the background, not leading globalization, but watching it evolve without it. That fear hit home after 2022, when France's military withdrawals from Mali and Burkina Faso exposed an uncomfortable truth. The old model of boots-on-the-ground power projection doesn't work anymore. By 2025, France had quietly rewritten its Africa strategy. Gone were the endless troop rotations in unstable regions. In came new partnerships with nations like Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, countries that offer stability and growth potential. And this time, France wasn't just sending soldiers, it was sending capital. Over 2 billion euros in infrastructure investments, new counterterrorism training hubs, joint programs to modernize local forces. It's a complete shift, from dominance to partnership, from control to cooperation. Because France finally understands the new reality, influence in Africa isn't about flags and bases anymore. It's about money, technology, and mutual respect. Meanwhile, the global chessboard keeps changing. China's Belt and Road runs deep through Africa. India's trade footprint is expanding fast. France knows it can't cling to old colonial optics, so it's adapting. Mixing hard economics, selective security ties, and subtle diplomacy to stay relevant in a world that no longer bows to Western command. And back home, supply chain chaos from 2023 to 2025 exposed just how fragile France's economy had become. Aerospace, automotive, energy, all hit hard by shortages and over-reliance on limited suppliers. Paris learned a painful lesson. Resilience requires diversification. The response was swift. Strengthen ties with BRICS economies, especially India and China. By 2024, Renault had ramped up component sourcing from India by 20%, while Airbus expanded co-production deals with Chinese firms. It wasn't about cheap labor, it was about strategic stability. France even invested 500 million euros into joint R&D projects with BRICS partners, focusing on hydrogen fuel and next-generation battery tech, the engines of tomorrow's green economy. This isn't random cooperation, it's industrial integration. France embedding itself deep within emerging market supply chains, building shared dependency so no single crisis can bring production to a halt again. But while France moves forward, the EU is stumbling. By 2025, the cracks have widened. Poland and Hungary keep defying EU rule of law standards, freezing billions in funding. Southern Europe struggles with stagnation and rising populism, as citizens lose faith in Brussels' endless bureaucracy. And in the middle of this, France is walking a fine line. Macron still preaches the dream of a strong, independent Europe, one capable of standing apart from both Washington and Beijing. But the reality? The EU's machinery moves at a glacial pace. It's slow, divided, and trapped in its own procedural maze. So Paris is hedging its bets, acting alone when Brussels can't keep up, forming mini alliances on defense, trade, and technology, often outside official EU channels. Each new move underscores the same truth. The bloc may still exist on paper, but in practice, it's becoming a mosaic of national agendas. France's message couldn't be clearer. Europe must reinvent itself or risk irrelevance. This pivot toward BRICS isn't rebellion, it's realism. A recalibration for a world where alliances are fluid, technology is power, and the Old West no longer writes the rules. As Western unity phrase, France is positioning itself not as a follower, but as a broker. A bridge between East and West in a world that's breaking free from old hierarchies. The age of unipolar dominance is over. What's emerging is a new world order defined by agility, competition, and cooperation in equal measure. And France? For all its internal chaos and contradictions, it's making one thing crystal clear. It refuses to be a bystander. It plans to shape this new era, not be left behind by it.